Video game movies are finally in a place where they're being taken seriously. For years they were the punchline, cheap adaptations and rushed stories, and a complete misunderstanding of what made the games work in the first place. But recently, things have changed. Studios have started figuring it out, audiences are showing up, and expectations are no longer set below the bar. So when Illumination followed up their first movie with something as ambitious as Super Mario Galaxy the movie, expectations were naturally high. And yet, here we are. Critics have not been so kind. Sitting around mid-30s on Metacritic, the general sentiment has been pretty consistent, visually impressive but messy, overstuffed and lacking real substance. At the same time, audiences are completely split. Some people are loving the spectacle, others are walking out wondering what exactly they just watched, and some have already decided it's just an Easter egg reel before even letting it settle. Hello, my name is Pepper, also known as Peptro, and today I want to talk about why Super Mario Galaxy the movie might not be the failure people are making it out to be, but also why so many people seem convinced that it is. Before we go any further, this is your full spoiler warning. We're going into everything: the story, the characters, the endings, the post-credit scenes, and yes, that cameo. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you may want to come back to this video once you have, or if you just want to hear my opinion, feel free to continue.
Calm down.
I saw the movie the day after it released, going in with nothing but excitement. I really enjoyed the first Mario movie. I thought it nailed the tone, the world, and most importantly, it felt focused. This one immediately feels different. Visually, it's a step up. There's more colour, more variety between the planets, and a stronger sense of identity across each location. The Lumas are a standout, they're impressive, full of personality. I feel like they actually belong in the world rather than just floating around looking cute. And one thing I want to give the film a lot of credit for is the performances across the board. They are generally quite strong. Chris Pratt as Mario, Charlie Day as Luigi, Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach, Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, they all slip back into these roles really comfortably. Donald Glover as Yoshi brings a lot of personality, even if it's more in the physicality than the voice. Jack Black as Bowser still absolutely delivers. Even without being the central focus, every scene he's in has presence. And notably, there's no big musical number this time. That feels intentional. It feels like they didn't want just Bowser to be known for that song or this song, and instead they let the character stand on his own. Alongside him, Fred Armisen as Bowser Jr. brings a more awkward, approval-seeking energy, which actually works really well for what the film is trying to do. Before we even get into the story, I do want to spend a bit of time on the reception, because I think that's part of what makes this whole conversation so interesting. Because if you look at what the critics are actually saying about this movie, it's not just one complaint, it's a combination of things. A lot of them are calling it messy, saying the pacing is all over the place, that it jumps too quickly between ideas, and never really gets time to settle long enough to build anything meaningful. And honestly, I don't think that's entirely wrong. You can feel that when you're watching it. The movie moves fast, sometimes too fast, and there are definitely moments where it feels like it's more interesting getting to the next scene than letting the current one land. But then there's the other big criticism. The idea that it's just an Easter egg fest, that it's all just references and callbacks, not enough substance underneath. And this is where I think it starts to get a bit more debatable. Because yes, there are a lot of references, probably more than they needed to be, but at the same time, I don't think it's fair to say that there's nothing underneath it. I think there is something there, it's just not presented in a way that's clear or as focused as people expected. And I think that's where the divide really starts to show, because if you go into this movie expecting something structured like the first film, or something closely that follows the Galaxy games, you're probably going to come out disappointed. But if you go into it just taking it for what it is, a fast movie, visually driven, slightly chaotic Mario adventure, you might have a very different experience. And I think that's why the audience reaction is so split. Because people aren't just reacting to the movie, they're reacting to what they expected the movie to be. Part of me also feels like this doesn't even feel like a Mario problem, it feels like a sequel problem. Because you see this happen a lot. The first movie is focused, simple, and it gets you invested. Then the sequel comes along and tries to go bigger. More characters, more locations, more ideas, more of everything. And sometimes it forgets what made the first one work, and it wasn't how much it had, it was how much focus it was. Now, instead of breaking the story down beat for beat, I think it makes more sense to talk about what the movie is trying to do, and where that works and where it doesn't. Because on paper, the setup is actually pretty solid. You've got Bowser Jr. driving the main conflict, trying to prove himself to Bowser by capturing Rosalina and using her power to create something of his own. That's generally interesting motivation, and Fred Armisen plays into that really well. It's this awkward, almost desperate energy to him that gives the character more personality than you might expect. At the same time, you've got Mario, Luigi and Yoshi acting as the core group moving through the galaxy, jumping between planets, dealing with whatever gets thrown at them. That part feels very true to Mario. It's fast, it's creative, it's constantly introducing new ideas. And then you've got Peach, who arguably has one of the more interesting threads in the movie. Her questioning where she came from, that sense of not knowing her origins, that's actually a really strong emotional hook. The problem is, none of these ideas get enough time. The movie introduces them, touches on them briefly, and then moves on. So instead of feeling like one connected story, it starts to feel like a collection of moments that don't quite have the time to fully land. Rosalina is probably the clearest example of that. She's positioned as an important figure, especially for anyone familiar with Galaxy, but she ends up with very limited screen time. She feels more like a presence than a fully realised part of the story, which is a bit surprising given how central she is in the games. And even the Peach and Rosalina connection, being revealed as sisters made of stardust, that should be a big emotional moment, but the movie doesn't really pause for it, it just keeps moving. Same with Bowser Jr., there's something there with the relationship between him and Bowser, that need for approval, that potential for something deeper, but it never quite gets explored as much as it should have been. So what you end up with is a story that has a lot of good ideas, but doesn't give them the time they need to come together. I think this is where the conversation naturally moves into the Easter eggs, because this movie is packed with them. And I don't just mean a few background references, you can feel them throughout the entire film. Some are subtle, some are very obvious, some are basically front and centre. Now, to be clear, not all of these are a problem. In fact, some of them are generally some of the best moments in the movie. The Peach fight sequence is a perfect example of that. Her taking on Wart and Birdo is such a clear callback to Super Mario Bros. 2. And it works really well because it actually fits the scene. It doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't feel like it's stopping the movie just to have this scene put in place. It feels like a natural extension of the world. And on top of that, it's just a really solid action moment. Peach actually gets to do something meaningful, gives her presence. It's one of the few times the movie lets a sequence play out without immediately cutting away. You've also got moments like Rob acting as the receptionist, which is kind of a funny idea on its own. The fact that he's slow and slightly unhelpful, and both groups have to deal with him, it works as a gag. And then there's Mr. Game & Watch in the final battle, and I got to give them credit for that one. Visually, that's probably one of the most creative things in the entire film. The way they keep his flat, classic animation style, but integrate him into a modern 3D fight. It generally looks great, and it's the kind of reference that feels a bit more like a celebration than just a throwaway cameo. But this is also where the issue starts to creep in, because when you have this many moments, this consistently, they start to stack up, and instead of enhancing the story, they begin to distract from it. You go from enjoying the references to noticing them, and once you start to notice them, it becomes harder to stay focused on what the actual movie is trying to say. Now, one of the Easter eggs I've kind of skipped over and leaving to now is because they already revealed it through a poster on their social media, and I'm not sure why they did this, maybe to try and bring in some of the older crowd, but I feel like it kind of spoiled some of the excitement behind it. If I went into that movie not knowing, after seeing and accidentally seeing the post, I would have been way more excited and happy to see Fox McCloud in this movie. However, I'm still impressed and I'm still quite happy, but you know what I mean, it took a bit some of that excitement out. Anyway, I think it's a good example of the shift where the movie's trying to enhance something and something that pulls it into a different direction. I'm not going to pretend I didn't enjoy his appearance, because I did. I love Star Fox. Growing up with Starwing on the SNES and Lilac Wars on the N64, there's just something about seeing that character get that level of attention again that feels so long overdue. It was generally great to see. It wasn't handled lazily either. They actually take the time to explain how he's there, with the anime style backstory showing how he ended up in this world through a rift. It's creative, it's different, and honestly, it's one of the more memorable parts of the film. But this is also where the things start to feel different, and a bit too different. Because up until this point, even with all the Easter eggs and references, the movie still feels like it's trying to tell a Mario Galaxy story. Once Star Fox becomes part of the narrative, it's not just a cameo anymore. It becomes someone who's actively helping to move things forward. And then you start to question what the movie is really aiming for. Because now it's not just Mario, Luigi, Peach and Rosalina, now it's something broader. And when you combine that with everything else the movie is doing, the references, the different tones, the constant shifting between ideas, it starts to feel like this might be trying to be something bigger under the Mario Galaxy title. Not outright saying it, but hinting at it. That's where the disconnect really starts to settle in, because on one hand it's exciting, it genuinely is. The idea of seeing these characters share a space, interact, and exist together like this is something the fans have wanted for years. But then on the other hand, it pulls away the focus from the story that's already struggling to hold everything together. Instead of building on what's already there, it adds another layer. And at that point, you start to feel the weight of everything the movie is trying to juggle. I think when you take everything we've talked about, the pacing, the story structure, the Easter eggs, Star Fox, and all of the rest, you start to see where the problem actually is. It's not that this movie doesn't have ideas, if anything, it has too many. There's generally a solid story in here, you can see it. Bowser Jr.'s motivation, Peach trying to understand where she comes from, Rosalina's role in the background, there's something there that could have been really strong. But the movie never quite settles on it. It keeps moving, it keeps adding, it keeps jumping to the next thing before the previous one had a chance to land, and I think that's why it's getting the reaction that it is. Because depending on what you were expecting going in, that's completely going to shape how you feel coming out. If you wanted something more focused, something closer to the first movie, or something that followed the Galaxy games more closely, I completely understand why this didn't land for you. But at the same time, I don't think that automatically makes it a bad movie. Honestly, I really enjoyed this movie. Is it as good as the first? That's subjective. If you're looking for a Mario movie that's filled with retro throwbacks, Easter eggs, references, and a bit of Galaxy lore layered in, then this is absolutely going to work for you. If you are looking for something more traditional, more structured, and more focused, then this might not be the one. But at the end of the day, I had a great time with it. I was entertained, I was engaged, and even with its flaws, it's one that I can see myself going back to. After those post-credit scenes, I'm genuinely interested to see where they go next. Whether that's a third Mario movie or something bigger down the line like a Smash Bros movie, there's clearly a lot of potential here, especially if the animation continues at this level because it really is top quality. They just might want to take a step back next time, focus a bit more on telling a clear, cohesive story, and not try and fit quite so much into one film. And on that note, I want to turn it over to you. What did you think of Super Mario Galaxy the movie? Did you enjoy it? Did it fall flat? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Let me know in the comment section below and let's start a discussion. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one.
I'm Bowser Jr., and I'm gonna be taking my father now!
Princess Rosalina, you're coming with me!